The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, award-winning Hall of Fame wrestling journalist, broadcaster, announcer, and podcaster, Jason Bryant. This show bringing you all the happenings and some of the stories that generate in our glorious sport of college, Olympic, and high school wrestling. Today, our guest is Aaron Sweazy, not to be confused with, Dalton, Roadhouse. Nope. The Sweazy has been a longtime wrestling fan and internet forum, character personality, also a very big advocate for small college wrestling, also spent some time on coaching staffs at various schools around the Plains and the upper Midwest, and he is one of our patrons. He is at the Olympian level, and that level you can go find out what that is all about at mattalkonline.com/join the team. And one of the perks of that, not just to mention the shirt, the hat, the draft glass, which, by the way, I've got a new draft glass in, and it is a 20-ouncer, and it is perfect for you craft beer snobs out there, and I am one of those people. You crack open that 16-ounce tall boy, and you got just the right perfect amount of foam at the top, none of this spilling, none of this extra stuff still in the can. It's perfect. It's got that Matt Talk Online logo on it, got the website, and you can get that by becoming a team member and supporting this show at mattalkonline.com/join the team. That is our Patreon campaign. And anyway, the Sweazy is a guy, he's been a friend of mine a long time, and he gets to jump on the show, and we talk small college wrestling, we talk national duels, we talk about a little bit about his journey back from fighting cancer. So it's an engaging, long-winded discussion because the Sweazy, he will tell a story, and he will have you sit back and be like, man, where's this? Yep, he's a storyteller. So that's what we got for you. If this is your first time listening, thank you. Check us out at mattalkonline.com. Rate, review on the old Apple Podcast. Some people call it iTunes still. That's what you can do. And let me know you're out there listening. Thank you again. Follow us at mattalkonline on Twitter, or myself personally at Jason M. Bryant. Email is always open. Twitter's always open. DMs are wide open for questions, comments, suggestions on who to bring on, things of that nature. But right now, we'll take it to the Sweazy here on Short Time. Now up on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about, we're going to be talking a lot about the NWCA Multi-Divisional National Duels presented by the United States Marine Corps and Defense Soap, which, by the way, we are contractually obligated to say the full name, including the sponsors, each time we mentioned it. Our guest today is a longtime contributor to the sport of wrestling via message boards, via coaching, via being Mo Lawal's basically tackling dummy during his time at Central Oklahoma. Aaron Sweazy, a.k.a. the Sweazy, wrestler Sweazy. Aaron, been a long time, man. How you been?
Hey, I'm doing well. How you doing, Jason?
I am fat and happy, and if that familiar Kansas drawl sounds familiar, yeah, it's familiar. You've probably heard him on Concordia University broadcast, even jumping in on the NAIA when I moved over from the television to the PA. You've pretty much been a small school advocate for your entire career. But first, let's just get your general first impression of some of the results there in Louisville.
Well, I tell you what, looking around at a lot of the brackets, Division III really caught my eye this year, and that's a level that might be the least I know about. But I tell you what, anytime somebody knocks off a Wartburg or an Augsburg, that'll get your eyes open. Also, when you look at that D3 bracket, Baldwin Wallace loses early on to Coe and then wins 5 in a row to take 5th. A lot of interesting things going on, I think, in Division III. I would challenge anybody who did not see last year's Division III national championships to go find that and watch it, because they might have been the most exciting last year. And just with how close some of these teams are, Mount Union and Baldwin Wallace, granted, still Augsburg and Wartburg, probably the two top dogs, but Johnson and Wells making a heck of a name for themselves as well. So D3 really was exciting. And there's probably some other things that I'm missing right now, but the Division III bracket was really exciting for me to see.
Yeah, that was one to watch. Lonnie Morris and his crew at Johnson & Wales, not just a cooking school up there in Providence, have really, 20, that program's 20, 21 years old, so they've really built it from the ground up. And before we get going, in case you're also wondering why Aaron is on the show, see, Aaron has been and it's just weird calling him by his first name because everybody's just always called him the Sweazy forever, going back to the days of the original Matt forums and then the wrestling talk and all the posters, get-togethers and whatnot. But Aaron is a patron of this program and of this network, and one of the perks of being a $20 a month patron, one besides getting every show all the time, is part of it's like to be a guest. You get to be a guest, you get to be a co-host. In this case, it was logical to bring him on to talk about these small college divisions, which he's always emailing me about, and emailing Mark Palmer and Intermat. He's emailing. I'm on this big email chain with a bunch of just wrestling fans. So there's that. And before we even get into the meat and potatoes of the national duels, Aaron, why do you feel the need to contribute to the Matt Talk Podcast Network?
I think it's important that there's a lot of individuals out there who are so they talk a good game when it comes to supporting wrestling, but then they don't contribute in ways of either getting their butts to a seat or financially. And both of those are what wrestling programs need from top to the bottom. I think it's very deceiving if you only see Iowa or Penn State or Oklahoma State at a home duel. You need to go check out some of these other small schools, because when you walk into a gym, you might be very, very shocked to see that there might be, a good crowd might be 25. It's very, it's tough for some of these guys to get used to that, that are coming in that might be multi-time champions at the high school level, that come in at the college level, and then you see empty stands. And also with what you do, it's a love of the sport. You're hustling and bustling, and people don't see that, and they don't see what the coaches do at the small college level either. It's for the love of the sport, and you're not making millions by any means, because if you were, you probably wouldn't be doing all these podcasts.
Yeah, this is a lot of shows. They have come and gone here in the world, but man, just every time I'm sitting there, I've got this list of stuff that I've always wanted to do, and I can't get to everything. So this is one thing I know as far as those patrons too, is getting people on to talk about what they want to talk about. Phil Merrill, for example, was one of the first guys up in Michigan to really reach out and be on this level. So yes, Phil, don't worry, you're going to be on the show sooner or later. Just Aaron just said, hey, let's talk wrestling. So one, I appreciate the patronage, I appreciate the sport, and you've got some cool swag to rock with it too.
Oh, absolutely. I've been wearing that Matt Talk beanie around quite a bit, and then the t-shirts are great. Haven't used the pint glass yet though. I plan on using that for a nice ice cold glass of milk. But other than that, no, it's a great deal for anybody who likes wrestling swag to become a patron of your shows.
Now let's talk national duels. Let's just go. I'm going to go top to bottom in terms of, numerically. So we'll start. We've already hinted at Division 3. I want to start with Division 2, where St. Cloud State's win streak is just impressive. I think it's at 39 in a row. Steve Costanzo, he wrestled at Nebraska Omaha. There's a number of Nebraska Omaha alums coaching at the Division 2 and Division 3 level. And this one, their tightest match was against Nebraska Kearney, 22-15 in the semis before just blasting Notre Dame College 35-6. And, general reactions from what you saw in the Division 2 tournament. I mean, there were some, backside upsets, and, Wheeling Jesuit beat Lindenwood twice. As Linda was the number 6 seed, so a lot of funkiness in D2.
There really was. The first thing I saw was looking at a quarterfinal match before it even happened, which putting the cart before the horse. But Nebraska Kearney and Pitt Johnstown, from a historic standpoint of D2 wrestling, that kind of had me drooling a little bit. And Kearney comes out with a nice win, 23-16. But then Pitt and Johnstown on the backside, you want to talk about Lindenwood. Lindenwood loses that first round of Wheeling Jesuit, comes back, and they're pulling out close ones. They beat Parkside 19-15, Pitt Johnstown 18-17, Upper Iowa 26-21 before falling to Jesuit again. So, Lindenwood doing a real nice job there. the final score for the final match, St. Cloud State just blew me away, and obviously they blew away Notre Dame College as well. But I was really shocked to see the score be that broad, 35-6. But yeah, looking on the backside, there was a lot of interesting deals. Indianapolis, they got a tough draw with Kearney right away, but they beat up a pretty tough Chad Thompson Fort Hays State team 21-13, and then they drop a 2-point duel to Wheeling Jesuits. So Indianapolis, they did pretty well. And the other thing too is at the same time we had the New Way College Open going on. They had 7 of 11 entries place in the top 4, I believe, in that, which is an awesome little open tournament. But we could talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, there's this one thing. You got 84 teams. Not everybody you bring is going to start, so that was a cool thing that they've added on the College Open. Now, one thing about the Division II championship is, it's the 5th overall for St. Cloud State, and people ask me a lot about, if you're going to send your kids to wrestle, where they go, and usually they're surprised by my response, and both of them are Division II schools. It's like Jim Makovsky and Steve Costanzo, because what I've seen from those guys is not just wrestling coaches, but as people. So like Jim Makovsky, I hold him in high regard, not to mention because of his music prowess and his fandom of Social Distortion and Mike Ness and such. But a lot of interesting personalities are in D2. One thing that I think surprised me the most, again, was that wasn't just the final score with St. Cloud and Notre Dame College, but it was, the way they did it too. I mean, you got, just a line of momentum there. I mean, Travis Swanson pins a returning All-American. James Plesky gets Taylor Masuna, a Virginia kid, coached by a buddy of mine, Jesse Pierce, down at Grassfield High School in Virginia. And then, I'm also disappointed though that we didn't see Notre Dame College and Indianapolis. Let's see, where was it? That the Notre Dame. There was a match where we didn't get to see the top 2 heavyweights go at. It might have been that first U-Indy match against Kearney where we did not see. There it is. Actually, no, we did see Falkenberg did beat Hendricks. I can't remember what it was, but there's a couple matches that we were missing. I'm like, man, I wish that would have happened. Yeah,
Falkenberg had a very impressive win over Hendricks, and for those that don't know or have short-term memory, Hendricks came out at the Cliff Keens and beat Demetrius Thomas first round of Pitt, who was a former NAIA champion, 2-time finalist when he was at Williams Baptist. But Falkenberg drilled him 7-1.
Yeah, where was it? It might have been no. Fanning wrestled that man. We'll figure it out. But overall, St. Cloud's win streak, now 39 in a row, and just looking good. Now moving to Division III, which is where you said, reason why you're less familiar with Division III. There's not as many D3 schools from where you grew up in the Central Plains, but we see a lot of D2, we see a lot of NAIA, and in Division III for the last 17 years, the only 2 teams to ever win this thing were Wartburg and Augsburg, and in each of those 17 years, Wartburg had made the finals in every single one until this year when Johnson Wales beat him 18-17 in the semifinals. That was a little wild to see somebody, Wartburg not make the finals for the first time in not just the event's history, but school history as well.
Yeah, absolutely stunning. But, come the end of the year, you'd be hard-pressed to try to convince me not to have Wartburg and Augsburg in the top 2. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think the parity's getting there. You're starting to see some teams really close the gap. But to say that it'll be this year that it happens, that might be up for. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Augsburg's looking pretty strong. Lucas Jeske back in the lineup. He saw his first action of the year. And what's interesting is as Augsburg wrestled Johnson of Wales, breaking it down. I mean, Johnson of Wales started out with the momentum. Jay Albus, returning national champion. He majored in All-American Victor Gliva, and then Bobby Jordan knocks off Sam Benioff, who was a returning runner-up. So right off the bat, in 2 swing matches, Johnson of Wales wins them both. David Flynn wins a tight one, on riding time with Joe Ferendi, another matchup of All-American. And what was crazy is at 149, Damani Burns and Alex Wilson go into sudden victory. Wilson gets the takedown in sudden victory. Johnston Wales challenges it and then says no, they wave it off, no takedown, and then Burns, gets the takedown. So that right there is a 6-point swing. So it's like, right off the bat, it's 10-3 after 4 weights, and it's like, I'm starting to do the math. I was like, okay, what's it going to come down to? Yeah, absolutely. But,
Augsburg time and time again, kind of like Wartburg too, traditionally in the past. You start getting in them upper weights, and I don't know what they feed some of these guys in the Bergs, but when you get into the bigger weights, you definitely see some stuff. And I look at Lance Binnick, who seems like he's been around forever. For Augsburg at 97, he had a solid win, but Tanner Vassar at 74, I think, really put a nice kind of momentum shift when he just destroyed Michael Gargano 17-2.
Yeah, I was texting Augsburg's SID Don Stoner at the time, and we're going back and forth, and I was like, wow, this one's interesting. He's like, you got to find some bonus points. And I had tweeted that Johnson Wales needed to weather the storm there in the middle, as they had Epps, Jeske, Vassar, boom, boom, boom. They weathered the storm with Jeske, but then Vassar with the big tech. I mean, there's the 2 bonus points. We're looking, is this thing going to come down to criteria? I'm sitting there with the paper doing everything, and then we get to the final 3, and I was kind of almost half expecting Camry Thomas to pick up some bonus points to really make this close, and then have it come down to really a 197, really the winner take all, in my opinion, with Bennick, who many remember as the top ranked 195, 220 pounder. I can't remember the weight class. It might have been 195 pounder coming out of high school, started at Arizona State for a year, and then ended up at Augsburg. Actually, for those wondering, he actually was on the Augsburg team last year, but did not qualify. He did not qualify for the Division III championships, took 4th in their region. So it's not like he's just showing up this year. He's back in the lineup, and he caught DiNardo. I think he pretty much took him out of the match initially by getting that quick 2-2 going up 4-0, and it's like, all right, cruise control, because it's kind of hard to score on a guy like Bennick when Bennick wants to wrestle. I mean, he's shown some lapses of like, yeah, I can sit here. Oh, I got taken down by this D3 kid. Okay, and now like John Jane, his opening round match, he was down. He almost got pinned in the first period, and then says, all right, I'm going to need a big throw to win this match. Goes out and gets it. I mean, it's just crazy. A guy as talented as Bennick, when his head's on, ready to wrestle, I mean, he's going to be hard to beat. And DiNardo, not exactly chopped liver. I mean, really, really decent season last year. Won a match or 2 at the Midlands this year. So that one, to me, was the winner-take-all. And then Lonnie Morris takes out Jason Gomez at heavyweight, trying to get a guy that likes to throw. And Ethan Hofiker from Augsburg is just kind of guy that's he's going to sit there and he's going to not make mistakes. His goal, not make mistakes, don't get pinned.
Yeah. And I tell you what, a lot of people don't know this about Johnson and Wells. Little tiny school out of Rhode Island, and like you mentioned earlier, they're known for their cooking. Julia Childs, Emma Lagasse are both alums of there. Willard Scott, the weatherman, also, but they only have 4 dual losses this year. And Augsburg was their 4th. The other 3, Wheeling Jesuit,
Division
Rutgers,
2.
Fresno State.
Yeah, so everybody's been 2 D1s and a D2.
Yeah, and I mean, solid, the Wheeling Jesuit, solid D2. Rutgers, of course, Big Ten. Fresno State back in action, looking good. I mean, they're going out there. They're seeing tough competition. They had 4 guys, I believe, at the Midlands. So Johnson and Wells is doing the right thing. Lonnie Morris is doing an excellent job there up in Rhode Island.
Now, NAIA, this one's fun because Grandview is now, let me see if I can find, I think it's 71 in a row. 71? Oh. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know, and I know you've mentioned it before, they could have beat Iowa State, but what was it?
Are we going to throw Brandon Wright under the bus yet again? I mean, every time you mention Grandview, and I'm guilty of it too. You mentioned Grandview, Iowa State from like 2013, 2014 season. It's like, they almost beat Iowa State. Eric Thompson pinned. I can't remember. I might have been one of the really not great Iowa State heavyweights. He threw him into the next county, and he kept his foot in the circle, in the cylinder. So,
yeah.
But and also, you spent some time up there, helping out at Concordia of Nebraska, and so you guys got an up close and personal view of Grandview come national tournament time. And here's the thing about them: it's not just like the D1 ringers that people say they have come in. Ronaldo Rodriguez Spencer. They're taking guys from the junior college ranks who really weren't really like super successful. I mean, they're marginally decent at the junior college level. They're in the starting lineup. They're taking guys from Iowa and things of that nature. There is some development going on in that room, contrary to like what people's perception of them is.
Oh, absolutely. I remember, and this was a painful situation to be on the coaching staff, but we went there to Des Moines and dueled them. And, sometimes you just sit back and you shake your head and you laugh because you're watching a whooping. And we were on the end of a whooping that one day, and it was crazy to see their original wrestling room. It was probably comparable to a small apartment. It was not very exciting, and you're wondering how they're doing stuff. But now I guess they bought an old bowling alley. They got 4 mats, a huge facility. And Nick Mitchell has just been awesome with what he's done. And he wrestled for Wartburg, if I'm not mistaken. And he's just done extremely well with building up that. It's a brand out there at Grandview, and they're doing an excellent job, and they've got excellent backing in the community.
Yeah, and you were not mistaken. Yes, he did wrestle at Wartburg. And if you go to a postseason championship like social or party, for example, at Wartburg, at the Division III, if you go to one at Grandview at the NAIs, they're pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's like they're like cousin schools, and people are sitting there wondering, when are they going to wrestle? When are they going to wrestle? I don't know if we're ever going to see them wrestle, because I think they're so similar of a program. They don't want to knock each other off. But right now, I don't know. Is Wartburg the team to knock them off? I'm waiting for somebody to knock them off. Also, one thing to mention about that Iowa State thing with Grandview, they also beat Division I Drexel that day. So it's not like it was just Iowa State. They beat a Division I team within those 71 wins.
Which was excellent for me, because having been at the NAI, the thing that always pained me is when I go back to your neck of the woods, the Virginia Beach area for the senior nationals, and we're trying to recruit kids. There's a lot of East Coast kids that, the Northeast kids that don't know what NAIA is. So we would have kids from Pennsylvania ask, NAIA, is that like D2? And it's like,
actually, kind of. It's got scholarships, yeah.
It does. It has athletic scholarships, but yeah, we're our separate division. And we can the great nuance that I like too, that NAIA shares with like the Cali JUCOs now, is you can qualify more than one guy at a weight class, which is always nice too, because sometimes you get a log jam.
Yeah, and there's been cases where, like in California, you've seen guys wrestle each other, teammates wrestle each other in finals, and you've seen at the NAI national championships. And
absolutely.
And speaking of which, Omi Acosta, the head coach at Life, who Grandview beat in the finals, he's a Grandview alum. I think that happened with him, if I'm not mistaken. And let's just move to that bottom side of the bracket, because we know Grandview just pretty much dominates Bethany, then beats Missouri Valley, which is having a little bit of a down year. Not like it's not a bad year for them, but it's not like what Mackholtz typically has there in Marshall, which, as we all know, is a nice community. Then a win over the University of the Cumberlands and Chris Flieger's squad, and then Life, which came as from the number 6, where they beat Baker, which is coached by Cody Garcia, former UNO wrestler. And then we got their win over Providence, which is in Montana, which is, go figure, used to be known as Great Falls. Then a win over Indiana Tech, which was, very formidable dual meet team. And then, that Life Grandview duel was really close until, no Nosomi Pozo, which kind of makes me scratch my head. We didn't see the national champ from Life in that duel. But, it was tight there for a minute, and then Grandview just, foot on the accelerator. And, have a guy like Evan Hansen, just a nasty good 2-time NAIA champ, and he's just a junior. Yeah.
Evan Hansen is something else. It's, not only a great Broadway show, but one heck of a wrestler at 197 for them. But yeah,
I don't get the Broadway show reference. Stop. I don't get the reference.
Oh, there's a show that won the best musical about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was called Dear Evan Hansen, and it's very socially relevant in terms of like dealing with youth suicide and fitting into the culture and stuff. But yeah, that's a different nerd side of me.
It's actually spelled the same too. It's not with an O-N. See, Hansen spells his name Hansen. I'm just wondering, do I dare say Dear Evan Hansen at the NAIA championships this year?
Man, I'll buy you a pizza.
I don't want a pizza. I just want a cold beer. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. Just for a listener note, I'm actually going to be talking to Sam Schmitz, the head wrestling coach at McKendree, about the women's division at length later on. If you don't hear it this week on Short Time, you will hear it next week after the Virginia duels. I'm heading back home to Virginia for that tournament. That's the longest. I've been to more tournaments at the Virginia duels than I've been anywhere else, although Fargo is my longest consecutive streak. But now we're going to get to a division that you really hold in high regard because of your time, coaching at Neosho with some characters there. And Northwest Tech, incorrectly, we've been referring to them as Northwest Kansas Tech. They prefer Northwest Tech. It is Northwest Kansas Technical College. It is in Goodland, Kansas, which basically is out in that northwest corner, as the name implies, of Kansas. And it basically, if you're in eastern Colorado, western Kansas, it all looks the same. But interesting there. 20-19, holding on, not getting pinned at heavyweight, and denies Joe Renfro denies NEO third straight year that NEO has finished second at the junior college at the NJCAA multi-divisional national duels.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I can't think of the last time a Joe Renfro coached team, so this is even going back to when he was at Labette, have lost to a Kansas Jayhawk Conference school. So this is one that's really got a lot of eyes opened up down in Kansas, and I know around this area as well.
And you got a little bit of an insight on what's going on down there. And I know you gave me the coach's number to say, hey, well, maybe we can get him on. But tell us a little bit of what you know about Northwest Tech.
Man, I tell you what, they've had they're on their third coach now, Mike Sabali. He took over after Steve Lampe, the old Colby Community College coach, former All-American for Iowa State, took over for a little bit. But Lampe basically was an April hire a few years ago. I don't know if he ever actually saw Goodland before he moved out here, but he was basically coming from New York, and he was a college wrestler for Buffalo back in the early 2000s. And he gets out here, and I'm sure once he landed in Denver and started driving toward Goodland, Kansas, he's probably wondering what he got himself into. But he's really built up that program, and it's a technical school, like it says. A lot of trades there, but they do offer some of your basics as well. If you want to go into teaching, they offer that. But kind of the running joke right now is it's Goodland is Mongolia. 4 Mongolians in the lineup for the finals, and he's got some other guys that are pretty darn talented too. So
yeah, as a matter of fact, it's not just the 4 on the team. One alum is now, or not alum is, well, yeah, I guess you are an alum because you get your associate's degree, is wrestling at Campbell. So there's a 5th Mongolian. Of course, we know that Lampe, when he was at Colby, really did a good job at bringing in international wrestlers. He had Gambe Arsanja was there, and Beksad Abdurakhmanov. So here's what I'm questioning from you. You were in that junior college level there in Kansas, and knowing how some of these schools are. What is it about these small junior colleges and community colleges in Kansas that will attract the international students? Is it the English as a second language thing? What do you think the key program is there?
I think the thing that helps is they see the sense of community. Also the fact that a lot of them, they do come in and they, I remember hearing a great story about Steve Lampe, the extra mile he would go to work with, the guys like Ganabar. He came in with very limited English skills, and he would take things like the Hooked on Phonics or the My Baby Can Read programs and really sit down and help teach him. He would use different games too that you might see more along the lines of first or second grade, and would even try to take him into the elementary schools where he could kind of mentor everybody, but he was also learning at the same time. I think you see a lot of coaches at the junior college level that go through a lot of things you wouldn't necessarily see at the 4-year level. There's a lot more, I don't like the term hand holding, but there's more of that. We're teaching young men, and then also in some cases now there's some women's programs to really have self-accountability, that self-efficacy to really move on and be able to, after 2 years, to be able to soar. So I think that's what's really, it's a nice thing for, you're sending your kid all the way from Mongolia to Goodland, Kansas. You want to know they're taken great care of. And I think all of those programs, there's so many JUCOs, not just in Kansas, but nationwide, that I think that's what those JUCO coaches do. They're a parent, a mentor, a coach. They're on the phone 24/7, ready to be called.
I mean, I've never been to Mongolia, at least not yet, because the wonderful sport of wrestling has taken me to 3 Soviet republics or former Soviet republics, yet I've never been to Montana. So I don't know what the landscape of Ulaanbaatar or outer Mongolia looks like. I do know what northwest Kansas looks like. And I'm guessing the landscape probably not that different from what our friends in Mongolia might be used to. Now, that could be just that typical, like, stupid American making a joke about a landscape that he knows nothing about. But in this case, so be it. I'm making a joke at Goodland, Kansas. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know the comparisons either, but I know what the inside of a hoo-hot Mongolian girl looks like. So.
Oh, let's not go there. I like
right.
I like the cuisine too. Now, moving forward, as we go to the women's division, we've got a very dynamic group of schools here. We've got NJCAA schools. We've got Division II, Division III. I mean, looking at the growth of women's wrestling, we're seeing programs being added in tandem now, and this women's outlet has been this women's group has been part of the national duels for a number of years. And this is what's it like from your perspective here, especially with these small schools really being the ones who are adding wrestling.
Oh, it's excellent. I was fortunate to call the KCAC women's championship, the first conference championship last year, and that was real fun seeing Missouri Valley, who they've kind of been, I want to say, the veteran kind of program that's kind of really led to a lot of teams adding. But when you look at this multi-divisional national duels and see a McKendree and then a Missouri Valley, and then you have Nassau, junior college program, and you got Gannon and King. And so, yeah, you have a little mix of everything. And you look at the scores. And that's where it's really exciting, too, is, the champions, McKendree, win 24-17 in the finals. They win 22-17 in the semis. Well, you look at the third place match, Wayland Baptist beat Emmanuel 23-21. King beat Cumberland's 24-20. They beat Wayland Baptist 26-20. So I think right now it's very exciting. It's very fresh. In a lot of minds and the growth. And I know you have 2 little girls. I've got a daughter. As a wrestling fan, I'm getting real excited about what the future holds because, yeah, I think it's super competitive. I think it's great. And I think there's nothing but upside for the women.
Yeah, we're gonna talk more in depth with Sam Schmitz on the next episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Well, maybe not the next exact episode because I'll be doing some stuff, as I said, from Virginia, but we'll definitely get some questions answered. I know you were talking about, what's the future of the WCWA? How is the NAIA listing it as an invitational sport and working on getting a championship sport, and the NCAA working on emerging sports status? And then where do those junior colleges sit out? Where do the schools and what is the Northwest Conference up there in the Pacific Northwest, which are, they're not officially NJCAA schools. They're in their own world, and they compete with the NJCAA, at least on the men's level. At least most of them do. Some of them have identity problems, but we won't go there. But it's one of those things. So all our women's questions will be answered by Sam Schmitz. But I want to dial this thing back to the junior college thing just for a little bit because Clackamas was unable to attend this year. I know getting from Portland out to Louisville and then having to turn around and go to another event is somewhat cost prohibitive in some sports. And they're at a 40-something match win streak. And, Northwest Tech's going to go into some duels coming up here at NEO this coming weekend. So we got some junior college. Basically, they're putting that title on the line right away.
Well, I tell you what, I had a great conversation with Mike Sabali, the head coach of Northwest Tech. And yeah, Joe Renfro is hosting the NEO duels this year, and that'll be this weekend. And you're talking about, none of the Iowa schools made the jog out there to the national duels this year either. Which, that whether or not it hurts the sport, there'll be some debates on that. But you're going to have all of the Iowa JUCOs plus Clackamas coming to town. You're dealing with basically a murder's row of, you're not facing any cream puffs. You're facing, 4 or 5 different duels with 10 per weight. And it's not just ordinary 10. It's the guys you want to go into the trenches with. So, I talked with Sabali. He says, I'm going to field 10 guys no matter what. in every duel. He goes, but I won the national duels. My next goal is to win the Jayhawk duels, and then try to win the region and try to win nationals. He says this is going to be a nice test for us, but he'll throw some guys, some backups in there, and I'm sure some other schools are going to want to kind of test the waters. That there's some guys probably licking their chops. I wouldn't want to face a kicked off NEO team right now. They can really get after it, especially guys like you want to talk about some weights that are real interesting in JUCO right now. 125, and we saw this in the finals match. Jordan Marshall and Mason Macy faced each other. They're both former NAIA All-Americans. So it's nuts. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think JUCOs this year is going to be phenomenal. The thing that's tough for me is having coached at the JUCOs and coached at NAIAs. There was a discrepancy in scheduling this year. Over in Council Bluffs, I guess they got the circus coming in, and NJCAA didn't get it scheduled right. So both those national tournaments are the same week this year.
And what's also interesting is the calendar also falls that the Division III qualifier, the Division III national championships are the same weekend as the Division I qualifier, whereas in past it would be I'd be at the NAIs announcing the NAIs, and I'd be during breaks I'd be watching the qualifiers from D1. Now, it's also interesting is when I go back to Virginia to announce the Division IIIs in Roanoke, and I've mentioned this on the show before, so if you've heard me say it before, you can go get a glass of water. Actually, no, just leave your earbuds in. But Division III is in Roanoke. The ACCs are at Virginia Tech, the EWLs at George Mason, and the MACs are at Old Dominion. So, 4 major wrestling tournaments in one weekend in my home state across 2 different divisions. Now, I want to just get the world of the Sways out there. To go back in time, there was a time where having this conversation may not have been in your future. You battled cancer there, and just give us some Cliff Notes version of what happened with it back then. We're talking probably 10, 15 years ago at this point, and where you've been since then, and what's life been like.
Yeah, so I was actually coming off of 2 national championship teams there at Central Oklahoma in 2002, 2003. Graduated in December of 2003 and went home, and I just thought I was getting buff and lean. I was in a lot of elective classes to finish out my college degree and thought, all right, things are looking good. But then I started getting sick, and then that year, April of 2004, I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they rushed me into the hospital and put all sorts of tubes and wacky stuff in me, and I went through a lot of treatments, a year of chemo, 2 months of radiation, and in the end, I was like, okay, I'm good. Then I couldn't work for a while, and found myself working in a chocolate factory around 2007, and I missed wrestling. I wasn't connected at all. And just out of the blue, Wayne Peterson, the now former head coach in the Osho, he called me out of the blue and gave me a chance. And, that's something too, is there's a lot of coaches out there who will only give chances to guys that were great athletes and stuff. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'll be honest. My time at UCO, I won 3 matches in 3 years. I'm definitely, you're not going to see me on the Hall of Fame there, but, it's one of those things that I always joke around. Hey, I went 0-2 at a lot of tournaments, so I got to meet a lot of people. And, all these years later, I'm able to talk to, individuals. I eventually ended up, staying down there in Southeast Kansas for a while, married, had 2 beautiful kids. And then, around 2012, 2013, went through a lot of bad stuff. Just, lost a job, went through bankruptcy and, divorce, became homeless, at one point too. And, I thought life was pretty much over, and I was pretty depressed. But thankfully, some people in the wrestling world knows him as Stiffy, but Curtis Chenoweth, former national champion for Newman, national qualifier later on for Newberry, he housed me up. He was living down there and was an assistant coach at the time for Neo Show, and I was basically in a enclosed back porch in the winter, and it was brutal. And then You fast forward to how did I end up in Nebraska? Well, 20 years prior, I'd met a girl from Seward, Nebraska at a show choir camp of all things. And I'd later go on in my first 2 years of college, I was on a
Okay,
show
this
choir
explains the Broadway stuff right now. So you're at least filling in some blanks here on how we're connecting the dots to how you know about Dear Evan Hansen. So continue.
Yeah. So what happened is I met a girl named Karina. We were both back in high school back in 1996 through 1998. Met at this camp. She'd become my singing and dance partner at Butler Community College, where I would then also get into the broadcasting world of, I did 2 NJCAA football championships. But, in 2001, she was actually killed in a car wreck, coming home. And she was the one that, got me to UCO, because she basically said, you're unhappy. You need to go find some place to wrestle. And, I had a connection that I didn't know about, and it was my aunt, who happened to be David James's his wife, Cherry. My aunt grew up with her, and I thank Coach James so much. He's had so many national champions. He had a run of close to 30 years of top 5 finish every year, and he's the only coach that I know of, and I may be wrong on this, to have 6 national champions in one year. But, he gave me a chance. But fast forward all these years later, and I have a buddy, Jed Clark, out in California, who coached me a little bit at Neo Show.
Everybody knows Jed Clark. Everybody knows Jed Clark.
He was at Lakeside High School for a while, I'll tell you that. But, Jed calls me and he goes, "Hey, Sweazy, you want to get back into coaching?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe. What do you got in mind?" And he goes, "Oh, there's a college in Seward, Nebraska." And well, that's where my friend Karina was from. And I said, "You got to be full of it. There's no school. There's no college in Seward.
There's a Walmart in Seward. I know that.
There's a Walmart.
I've been there.
And a few.
I've had to use the facility there one time. I won't go into details as to why.
Yeah, it's a quality Walmart too. But I didn't believe him, and then I saw it, and I was like, well, I guess that's a sign. And I applied, and I was hired pretty quick, and I only had like a month to pack up, and it was tough. I had to leave my kiddos behind, but I've built a better life, because when I got up here and I was trying to do a GA position at 30 plus years of age, and I'm older than the head coach, it was kind of funny. And I'll never forget when they had me do all the paperwork, and we're trying to figure out, okay, your rent's going to come out of this check, and you got child support coming out of this check. I initially was going to make negative $65 coaching for Concordia, which the athletic director's like, hire him now.
That's a good bargain
great.
there.
That's a hell of a deal. So it's one of those things that it was very tough coming up here, and but yeah, Dana Vogt, classy, awesome guy. Now at Midland, he's had tons of success at the NAI level. He really opened up his arms and taught me some stuff. And the first wrestler I met, because I was such a late hire, I was walking in, first week of August, and I come on campus and I see the wrestling room, which, if you've never been to the Concordia wrestling room, you walk
I guarantee you that maybe 5 people listening to this show, outside your friends at Concordia notwithstanding, nobody's been in the Concordia wrestling room.
Well, there we go. But when you walk in, there's a beautiful overlook, and it used to be, they used to have a swimming team, and they filled that in, and it's just a gorgeous area where fans could sit and watch. But I remember coming in the one time, and I'm just sitting there talking with Coach Vogt, and in walks Saran Francisco. And besides the fact that I had coached at Neosho and never had a wrestling room, anything like that, I darn well sure never had anybody that looked like they were chiseled out of stone walking my way. And Saran, for those that have never met him, just a genuine class act, awesome guy. And when Kyle Dake mentioned about in the draft a month or so back, this guy's, he's the one that everybody kind of drops their jaw when they see him walking in a room. That's what I thought. I was like, well, I could work with both this and in the room. So it was fun. And I've enjoyed it ever since. And I wound up in a major I wasn't going to do. I ended up in they couldn't get me into special education teaching because I didn't have a teaching certification. So a dean of public health said, I'll give you books. Well, the college was giving me tuition. So went through all that, did 2 years, got my master's in public health, and I was in the right place at the right time. State office job opened up, and now I work for the government, and luckily it's the state government, so I'm not on shutdown right now.
Yeah, you don't have to sit home and be like, oh man, no money. So moving forward, because you've been back you don't post nearly as much as you used to on the message boards. You've kind of kept the social relatively low key, even though there's some Facebook groups where you can be found. But I just got to ask, I mean, what is it about the sport of wrestling, especially at this small school level, that really, makes you want to pay attention? I mean, it'd be very easy to sit there and be like, I'm paying attention to Nebraska because I'm right there. I'm a Big 12 guy. I'm a Big 10 guy. Why so much care and focus beyond the levels that you competed in?
Well, I think a lot of it is, if you sit back and, I really would encourage people to start Googling, find out if there's colleges with wrestling in your area. I get kind of sick and tired of the old adage of, well, they don't do a good job promoting. Well, you can look just as easy as they can post. And granted, I do think there are some of these smaller colleges that are battling issues with, they don't have the media guys like the Big Tens and the Big 12s. You have coaches that are the driver, that are the coach, that are the meal preppers, that are doing all these little jobs. You know what? You can call the local college and see if they've got a program, but I'd say find these open. If you think that Big 12 and Big 10 are the only levels of wrestling out there, go to an open tournament, and I tell you what, go watch a guy like Boo Dryden from Northeast Oklahoma at 133 pounds, who will rip your chin off and feed it to your ankle. There's so many tough guys out there in the smaller divisions that are, everybody just kind of sticks their nose down on it. But there's a lot of guys on these message boards that drive me nuts because they want to talk smack on the small schools, yet half of them would never even start in a small school. And I'll take half of my teammates from back in the day at UCO and put them in some rosters. Well, Mo Lawal, he was a national champion, and then he moved on to Oklahoma State the next year and took third. So there's good wrestling at all levels. And that's the problem. I heard a dummy, and I'm using dummy really. That's my nice way of putting it. Say that you could never have a good match on the backside of a bracket, which just irritates me because anybody that's seen a blood round match or some of these other matches, best college match I probably have ever seen in person was a third place match at the D2s in 2005. And it was Shane Perkey of Indianapolis against Key Sweater of Nebraska Kearney. And it was tied 13-13 going into overtime when Key Sweater hit his fourth or fifth twister of the match. But it was insane. There's good wrestling at all levels. It's just you got to tell people over and over again until they see it that they'll believe it. I'll take Emmett Wilson over a lot of D1 guys. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, that's an easy one, Sways. He was a Hodge winner.
I know. I had to go with that. But I tell you what, if you lined up some teams right now, nobody would want to take on Grandview. I applaud Mitchell for going out to Reno. Top 5 finish there for them. And there's plenty of other teams, too, where you'll see a nice win here or there, but I think what you see at the small school level is a multitude of things. You see guys that maybe didn't have an offer. We had a guy at Neosho that was a 4.0 GPA, 32 ACT, two-time Oklahoma placer, but he wasn't getting any real good offers, and he came to us, and he did all right. He definitely wasn't a barn burner, but then you get some of these guys that they feel like they were overlooked. You know, you take a look at a Saran Francisco, and the funniest story about how he was recruited to Concordia was Dana Vogt was out at Virginia Beach at the Senior Nationals, and he's coming out of the restroom, and he sees Saran coming toward the restroom. And Vogt basically said, I don't know who the hell that kid is, but I'll wait till he comes out of the restroom to talk to him. And ended up befriending Saran, and, you know, Saran is family. He's so good. Talk to him every once in a while. But guys like Saran, who only wrestled basically a senior year in high school, where he went 1-2 at the state tournament in North Carolina, to come to Concordia, where he's a two-time All-American and a national finalist. I think at this level, and people don't get it. Some of this is redemption road too. And you might have to help me remember this, but I think it was last year, Lindsey Wilson had a kid that was a former D1 All-American.
Yeah, Cam Tassari.
Yeah. Cam Tassari. And he only won NAIs once. So I get a little, you know, not sick to my stomach, but, you know, it's kind of insulting when there are guys that have come from D1 levels that they don't dominate right away, whether it be D2 or D3 or NAI or whatever level of JUCOs. There's a lot of tough guys out there. And the other thing is too, is some of these guys that you've never heard of, the only reason you never heard of is maybe they never had the opportunity. Some people grew up in rural areas where they know folk style, they don't know freestyle. So you're not seeing them at, Fargo, which a lot of people always push Fargo. And I'm one of those people, which I know some wrestling fans will be like, okay, why don't you like drool over Fargo? Well, you know, we're still wrestling folk style in college. Unless you're the women, and then if you're with most of the women's programs, you wrestle freestyle. But I think if you go out there and seek, quality camps, quality tournaments, whether it be Fargo or something else, you know, you could get yourself seen. And that's the thing too. I tell a lot of coaches, because I think college coaches, it was rough looking at the JUCO brackets. There was one duel that I saw where there was only 3 contested. And granted, it could be from some of the lower turnouts, and some of the powerhouse programs not being there. But at the college level, you need to love, especially at the small level, you need to love what you're doing and really be invested 100% in not only what you're doing on the mat, but off the mat in terms of recruiting. And it gets painful to see duels. I did a play-by-play for a duel that had 4 matches, and I don't know what the answer is. If a lot of times it's the home team has to pay for the ref. Maybe there has to be an incentive there of, you don't field so many, you need to pay for the ref. But overall, wrestling is still the greatest sport, and it is a family unit. Any time I go to a tournament and I haven't seen somebody, whether it be a referee or a colleague, some wrestlers that I recruited that may have went somewhere else, you know, it's always a hoot when I see like you or Dort or, you know, so many others. It's, there's a lot of catching up. And, I think it would be great if sometime after season, you know, we have a bunch of just meetups and chit chat and talk about what we can do to better the sport that's already pretty damn good to begin with.
Interesting concept, because I'm always up for a beverage and a discussion about wrestling, no matter where it is. Now, I'm going to bring back this segment, and since you're a guy that has the long-winded answers and the very, very thorough responses, this is not going to be your favorite part of the show, but I've had some people clamor for it. They want the return of short time on short time, so I came up with 10 new questions. They're probably going to be modified a little bit. Nathan Shy, a.k.a. Grips and Hips, are going to need you to get some input on some new questions to ask. But all right, are you ready to go short time on short time? 90 seconds, 10 questions. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, Gatorade, favorite flavor?
Grape.
Best food in Kansas?
Ooh, steak.
Where is the best steak in Kansas?
There's a place, and I can't remember right now, but it's between Manhattan and Topeka.
There's a lot of places in between Manhattan and Topeka. Okay, funniest teammate of all time?
Ooh, either Pete Petrie or Sean Silvis is pretty damn funny.
Best place to travel?
I like going to Myrtle Beach.
Worst place to travel?
Atlanta, Georgia sucks.
What was the best thing about being a college wrestling coach?
You know, seeing the lives of kids change and seeing them grow.
Favorite professional wrestler of all time?
Oh, you would do that to me. You know, I got a lot of family in Pittsburgh. Bruno Sammartino.
All right, that's a good choice. Good choice. Favorite international wrestler of all time? Could be active or retired.
Ooh. International, you know, Eureka.
Favorite Del City, Oklahoma native?
Boy, they've got a lot of good ones, but it has to be David James.
Well, the answer's probably John Smith, but I'll give you DJ on that one. All right.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, I like Leroy Smith a lot, too.
Yeah, he's up there, too. Okay, now, best wrestling shoe of all time?
Oh, man. I was going to say, probably, they all fall apart on me, but I've always been a big Adidas fan.
Any particular model?
Golly, not really. Whatever was around in 2003, that's when they started adding all the Velcro straps over the shoes, and I had a pair that lasted about 10 years before blowing out the toe.
Yeah, I got a pair that's lasted about 15, but I've worn them about 5 times. I don't even know what model they are. Anyway, I wouldn't even keep track of time, but that's the way it is. Aaron, the Sweazy, welcome back to welcome to the show, and thanks for the time, man. It's been very enlightening.
Awesome. Glad to be a part of it, and feel free to have me back anytime.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MattTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to this show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you already listen and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, MattTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.